No. All right. Hello. I see a lot of people are joining us already. That's awesome. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Ooh, we have like 15, 16 people. Okay. Cool. Wait, just double checking. You guys can see my screen, right?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, perfect. And then I believe people should be able to message in the chat now. Perfect. So let's get this started. We're gonna do like a quick intro. So don't worry if people are coming in late because you won't miss anything super important. All right, so as you probably already know, this event is about building a high growth team, and we have some amazing founders and CEOs here. I will introduce them in a bit. I'm so excited to hear everyone's stories, but just some housekeeping rules before we start. So basically entry level helps you learn and get experience so that you can get hired. We're hosting this event in collaboration with Proximity Ventures. Caleb, do you want to give like a one sentence pitch of Proximity?
Yeah, for sure. So we back founders at the earlier stages, building in big markets across Africa. So really about like education, community, and capital for founders on the continent.
Yes, perfect. And that got me thinking, like, where is everyone calling in from? I know I am in Canada. I believe Caleb, Jennie, and Kennedy, you are all in Nigeria right now, right? Okay.
Yes.
I'm curious to know if everybody else is in Nigeria or like Canada, US. Feel free to put it in the chat. You should be able to access it and just put where you're calling in from. Okay, looks like a lot of people are from Nigeria. We have one from India. Isn't it like 12 a.m. in India? Thanks for being here so late. All right, most people from Nigeria as well.
Texas,
Awesome.
US.
Texas? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yay, we're good. Me and Texas are like still kind of far, but closer than Nigeria. Thanks for being here, everyone. Every time I do this activity, I learn so much about geography and like the different time zones. Perfect. Feel free to keep putting in the chat, but in the meantime, I'm just gonna go ahead with the introduction. So yeah, like I said, entry level, we have a few programs to help you learn and get experience, including the venture capital program and the product management program. These two are very popular with founders, and then the digital/growth marketing one as well. So I actually have a poll for all of you. I want to know your level or your role in tech. So there's going to be options. Let me just launch it. So are you a founder? Do you want to be a founder? Do you work in tech, or are you just interested and you want to kind of break in? Okay, so it looks like a lot of people are founders. Ooh, it's like so close. I don't know who's winning right now. I assume panelists, you can all see the poll results. It's very interesting. Awesome. So it looks like 41% of the people here are founders. 21 want to be a founder. 21 also work in tech or in a startup, and 18% are just interested. So I'm going to end the poll now. In case you're curious, those are the results. Thanks for voting. Awesome. So moving on, this is the agenda for today. I'm going to do a panelist intro soon, and then we'll jump right into Q&A. And after that, we can just end the event, and all resources will be uploaded. So don't worry, the event recording will be shared via email and on Entry Level's website. Okay, so housekeeping rules. Please be respectful. Don't ask inappropriate questions, but I'm sure like you have common sense, so it won't be super inappropriate. To ask questions, we recommend you use the Q&A box. You should be able to see it at the bottom of your screen. There's an option for chat and Q&A. So if you have a question, use Q&A. But if you have very specific questions about entry-level programs, you can use the chat and I'll reply to you there. The Q&A box is for our lovely panelists to answer. Please note that we can't see or hear you. So the Q&A box and the chat box is how you can ask questions and interact with us. And then just a quick announcement that we do have some other events if you're interested in topics like UX design and data and product management. Okay, now what we've been waiting for. So these are our panelists today. Zach is actually running a bit late, so he's not here right now. But we also have Kennedy and Jennie here. So I'm going to ask Kennedy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, very happy to. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us from very many parts of the world. It's always exciting when, we get to do things like this, and hopefully we can have a very fun conversation, right? I think panels can tend to be very, especially when over Zoom. So hopefully we have a very real fun conversation. My name is Kennedy Ekezie. I lead the team at Kippa. We are a financial management solution for small businesses. We are also regulated by the Central Bank of Nigeria as a payment service provider, providing tools and infrastructure for merchants to accept payments, manage their finances, and offer financial products to their end customers. And we're based out of Lagos.
That's awesome. FinTech is always exciting. I'm so excited to hear more about your story and your advice. Next, I will pass it to Jennie. Jennie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Good evening. And thank you so much for your time. I am Jennie, and I am the founder of Clafiya. Clafiya is a digital health primary healthcare platform that connects individuals, families, businesses to licensed health practitioners to provide on-demand in-person primary care services. We're currently based in Nigeria, operating in both Lagos and Enugu, Nigeria.
That's awesome. I'm so excited to hear about your journey as well. So actually, Caleb, I know that you have cool things going on with Proximity Ventures. Do you want to do an introduction of yourself as well?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Caleb, helped start Entry Level, which is this startup that's basically doing ed tech and teaching people how to reskill into roles really quickly. And so like our biggest audience is in Nigeria, in Africa, which is probably how most of you ended up on this call with us today, which is awesome. And I guess like from building and scaling Entry Level really just like ended up being kind of a plug for a few founders on the continent with like hiring, thinking about talent, thinking about like upskilling as well. And just ended up like having the opportunity to raise a small fund to invest in startups across the continent. So since the start of the year, we've been investing small checks into early stage companies, like at the earliest stage, the seed, pre-seed, ideally pre-seed, and have just learned heaps and have been like really helping founders with, like going from 0 to 1, and also just like on the sort of storytelling side of things. I think when you think about like the narrative of founders on the continent, or like the narrative of tech in Africa, it's still not mainstream in the way that like it could be to the rest of the world. And so really trying to fix that through content. And as part of that, I've managed to meet some really great founders like Zach. We invested in Payhippo. Kennedy, wish we invested in Kippa, but I think we missed the boat. And have just met Clafiya, Jennie from Clafiya too, which has been awesome. So really excited to be hosting this one.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro, Caleb. I believe now we have a few questions prepared and some that are going to be sent in as the event progresses. So without further ado, do you want to ask the question?
Yes, and I think Zach is here, but he's in the crowd. So let me make him a panelist real quick. Okay. All right, Zach's just been promoted to panelist. Give us a sec.
Perfect.
Sorry.
Hey, what's up, everyone?
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Great. Where are you calling in from?
If you can see the power is out, everyone can guess where I am.
The power could go out, and my power just went out recently because it was snowing here in Canada.
Ah, man, well, that's because Nigerians are moving to Canada. They're bringing their wahala with them.
Oh. Okay, so it does seem like everybody's in the same time zone on this panelist except for me. So you're in Nigeria?
Yeah, exactly. I was enjoying being in the crowd, but I guess I had to come up on this panel at some point.
Thanks for being here. We were just doing introductions if you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Payhippo.
Yeah, totally. Thanks so much. So I'm Zach, co-founder and CEO of Payhippo. We're building small business banking for Africa. We've started in Nigeria, where we've given over 26,000 small business loans, and we've had a monthly collections rate of 97%. And we've recently started expanding into other financial services. So we just acquired a microfinance bank, and of course, subject to CBN approval, but that's a part of our journey then to offer other services. We've been around for 3 years, did Y Combinator last year, raised pre-seed, seed round, and fortunately have had the chance to have Caleb come on as an investor in the company. And so happy to be here. So thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks for that awesome intro. I think we were just getting into Q&A, so don't worry, you didn't miss much. So Caleb, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. So excited for this. And thanks for everyone who's joining. We have 73 people here so far. Super exciting. So we have a lot of founders here. So I feel like some founders here can resonate, but maybe the draw card is like, you guys are at a point where you raised some cash, you have money in the bank, you're growing the team, and you're trying to do that pretty quickly. And so what I think we'd all love to know is like, what's it like as a CEO of your company? And what does your day-to-day look like? What does a typical day look like for you guys? And maybe we can start with Jennie. Like, what does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah. So thank you for that. My day-to-day, like, it's never the same. Like, I wear so many different hats, but I would say, like, at a high level, I'm doing a lot of strategy, some operational work. I do have a background in systems engineering, so sometimes I'm doing product development as well. Not too much though, but like I said, it's just more so like strategy, operations, some product, killing fires all the time. Like I said, like no day is ever the same. Although as of recent, my days have been kind of quieter or kind of quiet, but still, I'm doing a lot every day. I'm doing a lot. I'll just say that.
Yeah, dope. Cool. Kennedy, how about you? What does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, honestly, Caleb, that has changed significantly over the past 6 months, right? And I feel like, when you start to build a startup, your idea of productivity really is, if you're a software engineer writing code, if like me, like you do product design, you're in Figma, but over time that changes. And there's a part of me that was still stuck on, God, I still need to be doing that. Like, am I still being productive? But today there are 3 people at Kippa who report directly to me. And I spend most of my day talking to them, right? Almost obsessively. So that's how I truly get a pulse on what everyone, even down to the last person in the organization, is working on. I also spend I find that more recently, I spend a lot of my time reading during the day. Like, I have buckets of time where I spend time reading books, articles, etc. God, I'm seeing the comments and like, it's so funny. And finally, I, of course, do spend a lot of time with stakeholder relations. So we're a regulated entity by the central bank. We have tens of partners that we work with. So almost every day I do spend time on the phone talking to them. And more personally, I spend a lot of time working out and trying to also build a life outside of building a startup, which I think is very important. And it's very easy to forget for most people.
That's dope. Okay, so Kennedy, it sounds like for you, you're in Figma, you're building stuff, you're like getting shit done, and it's very like go. It feels like it's still that, but you said you spent a lot of time talking to 3 people, which was really interesting. Into that a bit more, like, who are those 3 people, and like, why has your time shifted from building to like talk, like, strategy and that side of things?
Yeah, I think the first thing is just realizing that I'm not the best person to do the things I was doing anymore in the organization, right? There are people around who can do it way better than I can. I was the only product manager in the organization for like the first 11 months of our existence, right? And now we have two great product managers who are way better than me at that. And I spent time talking to three people. My co-founder, who is also president at the org, Duke, who is also my brother, our director of strategy and operations, who leads our operations team and has very many functions reporting to her. You know, the fun fact there, she was my former boss at my first job. So hired her and she joined the team and leads our strategy and ops team. And the third person is our product leader who reports directly to me. So those are the people I spend the most time talking to on a daily basis.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's super interesting. Like the shift from doing everything because you need to like now being not as talented as say the other PM or the other UX designer in the team. It's an interesting one to take in. And Zach, man, like tell us like what does your day-to-day look like and where do you spend most of your time in and out?
I've heard a couple good frameworks for how this works. But first off, Kennedy, I love the mustache, man. It's fire.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, there we go. So anyway, day in the life of CEO right now. This is totally dependent on your stage, right? So for us right now, we're post-seed, pre-series A company. CEOs are said to spend all their time fundraising and recruiting. And I think both those things are important. I think during a time where fundraising isn't happening and a lot of folks are being conservative when it comes to hiring, you'll see that change. But we still definitely spend a lot of time on high level things. I think a different framework I find more helpful is saying like, hey, what are the outcomes? What are our objectives? And do we have the team to do it? Right. And that means, yes, hiring, but also training the team, supporting them, et cetera. So I'll give you an example, right? So as a credit-led fintech, we have to do, oh, wow. Let there be light. As a credit-led fintech, we have to balance, customer acquisition, loan collections, et cetera. Right now, we're revamping all of our loan collections. And actually, it's like totally being proactive, thinking about elections. I see we have some politicians in the chat here, but let's not get into that here. But you have to be mindful of the market you're in, right? So you have turbulence when it comes to elections in Nigeria. Some areas have instability, and so we're revamping all that. So the reason I'm doing that with our collections lead is not because I necessarily wanted to, although I'm enjoying it, but it's because look, no one else was there to do it, right? And so I needed to go in and support our collections team lead, right? Because he was swamped. My other two co-founders are supporting other teams. Someone needed to do it. I think the other panelists can kind of also say, look, there's some times when you just do random shit, right? And this is a good example of that. So the answer to the question is a lot of random shit.
Nice. I like that summary. That's really cool. Good packaging. And I think it makes sense, right? Like at the start, again, like you're sort of doing everything and then you find people who are better than you at stuff. But then sounds like even same with Jennie at Clafiya, like a lot of it's putting out fires. It's like, okay, that's not working. Let me like dig into this spot and just make sure everything's okay or bring it back to life a bit. That's really cool. I guess like I wanted to move on to ask a bit about like how you think about team and culture and like culture within each of your organizations. So I wanted to ask, how would you describe someone who works at, maybe starting with Jennie again, how would you describe someone who works at Clafiya Health? Like, would they have like similar attributes or values, or is it kind of a mixed bag? Like, are there things that are the same within your your team or within the people in your organization? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. Okay, so I would say like at its core, I focus on three things. one who is curious, because for us, like, we are very passionate about our patients' experience as they're seeking healthcare, and we always want to refine it and iterate on that process. So we need people who have like that sense of curiosity and always wanting to refine that process and what that experience can look like for our patients, our clients. Second thing I would say is empathy as well, because healthcare is very personable. So we want to make sure that as we are building, we're taking like our patients, like, their lifestyle into consideration. What are their pain points and how can we empathize with them to build a great experience for them? And then the third thing I would say is just, having fun. And I say that I don't take that lightly because, building a startup or just working on a startup can be very, very hard. And so we want people we're going to bring some fun to what we do every day. So for example, like, we're a strictly virtual team, like we don't have an office yet, but we try to like plan activities throughout the day just to bring some joy and excitement across the team and build that culture for us. Outside of that, like, people have different backgrounds. So I'm pretty introverted, but there are people on our team that are extroverted. And I find that bringing that balance to the team just makes everyone well-rounded. We have people from different like backgrounds. We like our product manager, she teaches French, so she's a French teacher on the side. And I love that because I like French. And so sometimes she would have like sessions with us. We have a couple of employees that are into music. And so sometimes we do like, outside activities around music as well. We have a great artist on our team. So like bringing that variety, I find also helps to create like not only a great product, but a great experience. When I'm just an engineer, I can lean on someone's like other background that's in like the arts or liberal arts or whatever it is, and help like round out my blind spots and make sure that there's anything I'm not seeing, they're seeing it, and then we can still build a product and still have a great company, great culture. So that's how I would describe like our team and culture at Clafiya.
That sounds so fun. I'd love to work there. That sounds like a really good time, and just like like a great like work environment. And I think what I noticed just from that is like the values that you just said are like very kind of core to the sort of product you're building. And I wonder if that's that's a common theme, right? Like the values are a part of the product in a sense. Like you need empathy to really build healthcare products, or like you need curiosity to go in deep about the customer experience. That's really cool. I have like a bunch of follow-up questions, but maybe I'll just ask everyone else some questions first before I come back. But Kennedy, how do you think about like the team that joins Kippa and the sort of values or attributes that your team members will have?
I was thinking about it while Jennie was speaking, and it's two broad things for different people. So when we're hiring junior talent on the team, the most significant thing I look for is potential and learning velocity. One of the smartest people I've hired at Kippa he joined us as an intern. He's still a medical student at Unilag. And he sent me a cold email on LinkedIn last year, and I didn't see it or ignored it, whatever. And he kept following up. I'm like, okay, who is this kid? Like, I'll talk to him, right? And he initially joined as like an executive assistant intern on the team. Nothing serious. For me, it was just, I see a hustler in him, and I just want to give someone an opportunity, right, for 3 months. And he exceeded every single expectation I possibly could have had of him. And that's not just him. We have a bunch of interns on the team who are students, and these are some of the smartest crops of people on the team. Like every single intern on the team is incredibly smart. And I think the single thing we look out for is learning velocity and just potential. I think it's almost very easy to see. I don't know if this is intuitive or if there's a formulaic answer for that, but I think when you meet people who are hungry and have something to prove to themselves and to other people, it's almost a very good way, early on to find and bet on someone. But when I'm hiring for senior leaders, executives, etc., the most important thing I look for. Like, it's not credentials, it's the ability to have opinion, informed, independent opinion about the market we're in, about the trends that are popular. I'm currently interviewing a few product managers, and over the past 6 months, I've spoken to more than 50 of them, and I try as much as possible to ask questions around to really get a sense of what their opinions are. One question I always ask is, what is something every team in this space is doing wrongly that for sure, but you just don't have proof of, but everyone is doing wrongly? And it gives me an opportunity to kind of get a sense for, how they think and what they think and where they get their information from. And when I hear their answers, I can almost tell, okay, this is what you read, because I've read exactly the same thing, but that's not your opinion, right? It's the opinion of someone else masked as your opinion. And I've realized that leaders who at the interview stages demonstrate that ability to be distinctively opinionated almost end up doing really well. So yeah, I think that's the silver bullet, if there's anything of that sort when it comes to hiring people.
That's amazing. Okay, so it looks like you look at how quickly do they learn, and then like how much of an opinion do they have and how much do they stand up for that?
Yeah.
Okay, how would that do you think that ties into what you're building at Kippa? Or is that just like, these are just the features of great leaders that you think you can take anywhere and sort of export that to Clafiya or Payhippo or
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's directly export. Like at this point in most startups, right? We're also a seed stage company. You can hire any smart person, to come on board the team and actually build with you, right? And even when we talk to product managers, I do not necessarily look for people who have product manager on their CVs, right? I see those every time, and it always doesn't translate into what you want. It's just, can you think, like, again, to use a very cliche term, from first principles, break questions down and potentially work with the rest of the team to try to answer those questions, right? I don't really care for right answers. When I interview people, I do not look for correct answers. I just look for a process, and maybe that's how I'm used to being judged too. I look for a process, and usually when there's very clear logic and a process to how they think, it's almost an indicator that they would survive and they would do anything to find answers. I think honestly, early stage startups need people like that. You need people who are generalists. Industry experts can slow you down, and they are important when you need them. But I think they are not critical to the success of your company, especially this early in the company's journey. So I think it's very transferable.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool insight. Thanks, man. And Zach, like what does a fellow Hippo have in common, like with the rest of the team? So like what attributes or values would you say like consistent across the team?
I think it's two things. One is, I'll just connect it to, the first part is learning. The second part is just grit. So the learning piece is, I think kind of hit the nail on the head with learning. I think it's basically, a startup is so freaking hard that you are going to fail. You will not be comfortable. And so at Payhippo, our team members fail all the time. That's not a bad thing. That means they're trying shit and setting goals and like putting themselves out there. And we have a really difficult mission, just small business banking in Africa. It's so difficult. It requires you to fail, right, in order to make any progress. But a lot of people can't fail. Like, we've hired people who are not a good fit because, when you're in a large company, when you're in a larger bureaucracy, no one may notice any failure. And it's easier to be comfortable. And the second part is grit. Hippos are the toughest animal around. Their skin is 2 inches thick, and they kill more humans than any other animal except for mosquitoes, but I don't think those are animals. So we look at toughness, right? Like, this is like I guess when we're interviewing, we look for, hey, can you learn? Can you be humble? But in order to stick around, you not only have to have that, like, you gotta be tough, man. Like, Jesus, this shit is hard. Pardon my French. Everyone's job is difficult. Even our office manager, like everyone's job is so hard. So I now in interviews am just looking people in the eye, telling them how difficult it is going to be. I had someone send me multiple paragraphs after the interview telling us no because they weren't ready for the responsibility and they wanted to work at a larger company. Where now when you're interviewing, you don't like hearing no if you want to finally give an offer to someone. But this is the best possible scenario. If we're not even on the job yet and you're already intimidated, like you're already thinking, hey, I don't want that responsibility, and you want a large corporation, you should not be at Payhippo because that is not Hippo status. That is like, ah man, what is that? I don't know. That's like a gazelle. It's different. Yeah, so we look at learning and then grit, toughness. Yeah.
That's awesome. And like, how do you assess grit? How do you like assess that? Like, there's one thing which is telling someone like, yo, like it's gonna be hard, it's gonna be tough. Here's all the stuff you're gonna do. Like, is that the best way to assess it, or are there other ways you look at how much grit someone has?
Well, that's why I was saying learning is more in the interview process. Grit is like once you're on, right? Like we've had people join who just were not happy. And like you can have the perfect culture and still have people not be happy. Like it's not 100% happiness for everyone. And that's okay. Like I tell people as well, like I have friends and family who would not enjoy being at Payhippo, right? But I still love them, right? But it's like, look, that's not what they want. They don't want to be just every day grinding their ass off, like working, right? Because what we're doing requires that, the level of work, and that's cool. But yeah, Caleb, that's kind of a thing that you can try to interview for, but like, yeah, it kind of takes a little bit of time. It takes a couple of months to really see, because that's when all of the glow of a new role like can wear off, right? And you're in the day to day. That's when grit really comes out.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, cool. So I guess like, yeah, I'd love to think about like maybe holistically as a team or like running a team. What do you guys define as good culture? What does good team culture look like to you? And then maybe like, if it helps, you can define what bad team culture looks like too. And yeah, maybe we can go back the other way. So Zach, you can start with that one.
Oh, we're shaking things up.
Yeah, switching it up. Yeah.
I don't have a perfect answer for this. Like I don't have a perfect definition, but I have a pretty close one, which is, look, your objectives should be clear at the company, and then you can think like OKRs. Your objectives and your key results should be clear, whatever they are for you. Or if you're not using OKR system, you can whatever your goal setting system is. Your culture is healthy if everyone is working productively toward those goals. If you are not working productively toward those goals, there's something breaking down. Culture is how people communicate. That's why music is culture, because you're communicating through music. That's why dance is culture. You're communicating with your body. That's why art, you're communicating visually. Culture in a work setup is how people are communicating with each other. Is it a toxic work environment? Is when people are treating each other with their words like poison with how they communicate each other, right? A very strict work environment means like, hey, you gotta like be careful what you say and watch your tongue, right? So it's all about how we communicate with each other to get those outcomes done. So I don't know what's necessarily good or bad, other than, is your culture allowing you to make progress toward those outcomes? So that's like the academic definition, but I would say let's make it specific. Like, let me give a real world example from Payhippo. For our culture is heavily based on prioritizing, and like it's to a fault, right? Like, so if on the engineering team, for example, everyone has tons of ideas and all of this, and everyone's really creative, but once the priorities are set for the week, and for that sprint, or then in a larger project, you don't break away from that, right? Like, and the way we communicate that is like, hey, this is a priority, the other things are not a priority, right? So that if you fit into that culture, you're also thinking in terms of prioritization is important. Absolutely, we're speaking the same language. But we've had people rubbed the wrong way by that, where it's like, wait, what I'm thinking about isn't a priority. And you could get offended by that, right? Like, but I'm bringing something up now. We're not like focusing on it right now. And I understand that, but it doesn't fit how we do things, right? So that's not a good culture fit for us. Ours is about intense prioritization. We change our priorities frequently. You have to as a startup or you'll die. But that's one example of how we communicate to hit our outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. So culture is at Payhippo, it's like around, well, I mean, for you, like you define it as communication and clarity of communication, and alignment with goals, but also just like within Payhippo, it's also prioritization, which is a really interesting one.
It's like
Yeah,
how we work
Kenny.
together. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. Do you want to add to that, or was that the roundup?
No, like it's basically in sum, it's not just the words you say, but that's just one part of like, hey, how do people work together to hit those outcomes?
Yeah, awesome. So cool. Kenny, how about you? How do you define culture, and then how does it exist at Kippa?
So I think the definition of culture at startups is not different from how we define culture, right, in societies, in countries, etc. Right. The way I think about it, when we interweave one another's gathered knowledge strings into a mutually recognizable social pattern, then like a culture emerges, right? And within a startup, those knowledge strings, the sources for those knowledge strings are different, right? One of them is the markets. The most important one is your users, what they want, how they use your product or the services that you offer. Others is, of course, opinion pieces, and mostly knowledge strings from each other and where we've come from before. And I would say the most important thing from a culture perspective that we've done at Kippa. So first things first, I think culture usually is an extension of the founders and what they prioritize. At every startup, it tends to be that, right? And at Kippa, we unknowingly have set up a mechanism for identifying and absorbing those who belong and almost purging those who do not, right? And I think that like realizing that allowed me to know that, okay, well, a culture has formed where there are people who have a particular style of working and prefer to work that way. And when people come into the organization, and they find that that's not them, they almost self-select themselves out of that. And I think that's incredible. And I want us to be able to take that and now start to scale it, right? A few things that, I can see from the team, because of course, while culture emanates for the team from the founder, it's up to the team to truly name those things. So for us, I wouldn't, have an issue when we started and we were, writing our pitch documents and everything. It's like, what are our cultures? The typical things, empathy and, like, we're like, okay, let's put all of that aside. What's real here? There are a few things that I've noticed, at least three things that are real at Kippa. One of them is bias towards action, right? I think we are a team that moves quickly. And the way we think about it is, let's just keep momentum, right? If we're moving in the wrong direction, let's move quickly, realize how wrong we are, and redirect ourselves. We're also not afraid to go back to the drawing board, right? We're not, the word I used while describing this to someone recently is like cowards, right? That are afraid to realize, look, we may have made decisions that were not correct, but we're very happy to learn from them and go back to the drawing board to fix things. I think that's another attribute, and the people who do well within Kippa are people who are willing to be like, I did, that was a bad decision, or we made mistakes, or assumptions were wrong, and we're going back to the drawing board. And it's not about the answers again, it's about the quality of the questions that are being asked. And once we are asking the right questions, then we trust ourselves to figure out the right answer. So most times it's that the question we're asking is wrong. I think that's usually the problem, not just with Kippa, but with startups, with starting anything new. And as much as possible, our culture is focused on asking the right questions always and ensuring that everyone has the ability, has the resources and the support that they need to be asking the right questions and can think on that level. A final cherry on the cake, if that's what that idiom is we we're obsessed with execution quality. I think this is still something that we're still yet to get to every single person in the organization, right? But at the level of the managers and the individual leaders, when hiring for them, there's of course like a certain sixth sense and obsession with execution quality that I look out for and that we look out for. And that's very fast becoming a part of the culture here on the team. I still think there's a lot we'll figure out as the team grows, as the team changes, as the organization evolves. Our culture is only going to continue to evolve. But very important to me is that it remains team driven. Like, we are not shouting from the Eiffel Tower, these are the cultures, these are the values that matter to us. But no, like, we hire great people, we let the culture form, and almost organically, and see where that goes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, you picked out a bunch of really, really cool things which come from your culture, which is cool. So I guess I'm trying to recall them. One is like quality of questions, which is a really interesting one. And that's actually one that, like, I think that, yeah, quality of question is one that I actually don't hear too many founders talk about. I think like there's this sort of like notion that like you just run in a direction and you find something or you stumble on something, but it's a really interesting one when you have founders who really think deep about like what questions they're asking. It's cool. And then the other one was like, what was the first one?
Bias to action, so really moving quickly.
Bias to action, yeah, super, super cool. Yeah, that's awesome. I'll ask a follow-up question for all of you at the end of this, but moving on to Jennie, how would you define like culture within Clafiya? And yeah, like what are a few examples of that?
Yeah, so I think like the other two panelists have already talked about culture. So I will like talk about culture at a high level, but for Clafiya, I remember when I first started and I was recruiting a few people, and they would always ask me like, so what is Clafiya's culture? And I'd always tell them like, well, it's evolving. I don't know. I mean, I didn't really put too much thought into like what our culture was. And then when I realized I kept getting that question and how important it was to have that question answered and have that like be like fed throughout the team, I actually started to like think to myself or just ask those questions for myself, like, what is Clafiya's culture? And it kind of ties back to what I was saying before, like, what are the values, right? But at its core, what our culture is like just being obsessed about the problem that we're solving. I say, like, I used to work at Amazon, right? And so their first leadership principle is customer obsession. And for us, like, I say patient obsession, right? Because we have to be obsessed about the experience that we're providing for our patients. And I need everyone who joins Clafiya to basically embody that. It also ties back to being curious, like what new challenge do we have? Are we experiencing in the field? Are we experiencing in operations? How can we improve that process, right? You have to be curious enough to want to do that, and also being intentional, because we don't just do things and just for the sake of doing it. I always tell my team members, like, there's no reason why you will spend all day working on something and you won't give it your best shot. And you have to be intentional in order to do that. And so those are the things I would say, like, are part of our culture. I can't really, I mean, to be honest, like, I'm still trying to define like what our culture is, because we are growing, we're bringing on new people are going to come with different perspectives, right? And that's going to force me, as a founder, to like think of like, how can we continue to shape our culture in a way that is accommodating to everyone, or I'll say most people who we want to bring at Clafiya and actually want them to stay. But that's how I will describe our culture, just being obsessed about the patient experience and being curious enough and intentional about what we're doing all day. Being a hard worker, right? Like, I mean, we all work very hard. Healthcare is a very, very difficult and complex challenge, a problem to solve, right? So we all need to be like problem solvers. Otherwise, like, why are you here? Because we're solving a big problem. And it's hard, and we all have to understand that will also require us doing things that isn't part of our job description, but to ensure that at the end of the day that our patients can say that they got the best experience while they were accessing healthcare from us. That's really what we're driving at. And we will go at lengths to ensure that our patients, our clients can say that about us. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's awesome. Super cool. So your culture is really focused around like, yeah, again, like obsession with the patient and working hard to get things done, and like really focusing on like what you want to achieve, and being intentional about where you work, which is really cool. Okay, so we've been talking for a while, and I really want to get to us users, our audience's questions, and we have some really good ones. So I'm gonna start shooting some of these out to you guys. Maybe we can start with Kennedy. So how did you put together your A team? And how did you decide on your co-founders, investors, and the whole 9 yards? Maybe let's take that as like your initial crew, like your initial team that you started with, and then maybe also your first couple of investors. How did you find those people and put them together?
I really appreciate whoever asked that question for the implicit assumption that, we have an A team, but which is true, by the way. So with my co-founders, right? I have 2 co-founders, one of whom is my brother, and the third, a longtime friend of ours. I've heard this before, that when you just start building and you're trying to solve an important problem, as I'm sure the other 2 founders on this call would allude to, investors will find you, right? I think it is the job of investors to find you. And I know this because we worked on something else before we started building Kippa, and it was just a little different, right? Of course, we started building Kippa in a hype cycle. Markets were a little different, but I think there was also something that resonated. It was a relatively easy story to tell to investors, and a lot of the storytelling, you'll find your early investors even do that for you on your behalf, and they co-create the vision for what it could be with you. And so how did we find our first investors? Like, our very first investor really reached out to us, found us via LinkedIn, and sent us a message, and put the first check in us. I guess the person asking that question is probably thinking of doing something or trying to build something. Honestly, my very candid advice for you would be, do not worry about chasing investors or building something they would like. All right, the more you chase them, the more they run away from you. So it's honestly not very useful use of it. Honestly, like, just don't do it, right? Focus on trying to find a problem you're excited about. The first dollar that we spent building, a mentor of mine, gave me $80,000 to try to be like, I don't really understand what it is you're trying to do, but I trust you, and go figure it out, right? And I understand, of course, that's an insane privilege, and not everyone has those connections with deep pockets who are willing to extend their own personal capital. But focus, especially now, right? Just focus on building something you're excited about, right? Focus on building something that you're deeply excited about, and whether or not investors come on the journey with you, you're going to continue to solve. Because trust me, when it gets hard, when you start to build and you're building in a hype cycle, and that dies down, it's a very different conversation. It now boils down to the conviction you have in what you're building. And of course, when your team sees that, a lot of people have told me, look, we're building something before, and every single engineer who worked with us on that project are still joined Kippa with us and are still with the organization today, right? And when people see, okay, you know what you're doing, because I think a lot of people are waiting to be told what to do with their lives, with their careers. And when they find you, who has an insane amount of conviction, and you're working on a problem that's so important, they are willing to follow you, right? And that's just so true, because historically we are conditioned to we want this superstructure to tell us what to do. And I think that's incredibly important. And of course, no team would follow you, no smart people will come around the table with you if you're really not that, right? So yeah, I think that's it. I don't know if I answered the question, but there goes.
That was amazing. That was really good. Yeah, so understand, I feel like from that I got to know who you kicked it off with, but also just what to prioritize at the very beginning. It's not funding, and it's not finding investors, just building something having high conviction, and doubling down on yourself and what you're building, which is awesome, Kennedy. Jennie, how about you? How did you put together your A team, and how did you find your first set of believers in what you're building?
Yeah, so I would say like the very first people who joined Clafiya, I found them through like networks, either by like, I would, before I actually started building out Clafiya, I would tell stories about the problem. And through that way, I was able to, I guess, gain a following or build a small community. And so either like people would reach out to me via LinkedIn, I'll be out, they'd recognize my face, recognize me from Twitter or Instagram, say, hey, like, I really like what you're doing. And then I would just strike a chat with them, ask them a bit like probing questions. And then I realized, okay, like, you know, I can work with you. Like you can join Clafiya. And that's how like I got like, you know, the first few people to join Clafiya. As far as investors, honestly, when our first investor microtraction, we weren't looking for investment, right? Tekabel wrote an article about us, and it got a lot of traction. And for lack, no pun intended, but anyways, it got a lot of traction, and that's how like we got like a lot of investors reaching out to us. And one of them was microtraction. And they said, hey, like we read about you, we would like to learn more about what you're doing. And we had our first meeting with them, and they decided to invest. And we were super, super early at that time. But what I really liked about them is that like they were very like personable, they were founder friendly. I didn't really see them as, you know, someone that's going to be breathing down my neck, like when things are going to get tough or whatever. And also, I would say, like, when I'm looking for investors, I'm looking for investors, like, you know, Kennedy said, that are going to be with you through the tough times, or just to help you get things done, help you tap into their networks to either find expert advice, to even find new investors, right? So we just oversubscribed our pre-seed round, and microtraction was when I tell you, like, very, very instrumental to helping us fundraise. They did all our intros. When I talk to other people and hear about their fundraising story, I'm like, wow, like I didn't even talk to that many investors. Microtraction did that work for us. They did the intros, and then it was really from us from there. And aside from that, like we did get investment from like you know, angels, so that came from my network. Like Google recently like invested in us too. There was Norskin, but just finding those investors that are is equally passionate about the problem that you're solving, passionate about you and want to see you win, was like really, really key for us. And of course, like we have those investors that like really just wanted to invest and are hands off, and that's okay too. But I find that the investors I have today, like I can easily reach out to them, ask them questions. They will stay on the phone with me like till midnight brainstorming. I can go to them, I can have a breakdown, you know, it's okay, it happens, right? But they're really with me, you know, in the trenches, and ultimately just share the same goal. Like I'm not just someone who put a check into your company. I'm also here as a mentor, as a friend, as an advisor. And I want to see you win. I want to see Clafiya win. So those are the investors that we look out for when we were like fundraising. And I would say, like, you know, like Kennedy said, don't chase after the funding. Like if you're building something great, like people will find you however they do. And that's all I have to say about that. Yeah.
That's amazing. So cool. Like it's so cool that, you know, both of you guys really just started building and would just focus on the story and like and what you were building. And I think also like there's a really strong thing that that you touched on, Jennie, which is like the power of narrative and just storytelling to really bring on the first couple of people and the first believers in what you're doing. So really cool that's how it played out for you too. And Zach, how did you assemble the A team? How did you meet the crew, the OG hippos, and then your first set of investors?
Well, we've hired plenty of people. We've been around for 3 years. I think we've definitely hired people who are not 18, and we learned a lot from that.
Sorry, but
So
Zach, by A team, I mean like your very first couple. So like your co-founders, maybe your first people to join the team at the very start.
that's what A team means? I thought A team means like what Kennedy was saying, like, hey, we have an A team.
No, okay, so like I guess yeah, that's right, it does. More like how do you start? Like how do you find the first couple of people who join you? To your co-founders, and then maybe early team, and then like your first investors as well. Yeah. Sorry, yeah, A team I guess also means like your high performance.
Let's just do co-founders. Let's do co-founders and investors. Okay. Yeah, kind of like a lot of perseverance with both because I was working in fintech lending and a lot of people were trying to, I mean, not a lot, I'd say a handful of people were trying to start companies with me. And you have to start a company with people you trust or like can see yourself working with. And my gut just said no for these people. And so I just did it. But my eyes were open because I had such a clear idea on, hey, what was going wrong with fintech credit for small businesses. So when I met my now co-founder Uche, and he's our CTO, and I saw him in action. I just thought he was a really great guy. It was like the opposite of the impression I had with the other people, which is like, I don't know if I trust like this. I don't know if this is like going to be a good relationship. So I pitched him. I would say I indirectly pitched him. I kind of like sat down I was telling you this, Caleb, like we sat down at a coffee shop and I like sketched out the idea for Payhippo once. And I was like, so what do you think? And we weren't talking about starting it. I was just like, here's the idea, sketching shit out, like back to the napkin moment. And he's like, yeah, and he was getting into it. He's like, yeah, you could do this, you could do that, you could do this. And we're just like penning around with shit. And then after this long discussion, he looks up at me and he goes, so do you want me to do this with you? And he asked me that, and I was like secretly wanting that. But I was a bit shy. So I said, like, do you want to do it with me? And then like, that's I guess we asked each other out. Like then like a few days later, I called up Chioma, who is our other co-founder, and just kind of lucked out there because she recently left her job. She was a perfect complement to Uche and myself. Had just worked across Nigeria, had run operations for a company, was first employee there. Yeah, it's like asking someone if they'd like to date you. Yeah, so don't ask someone out unless you actually like them. That's the story here. Because people were asking me out, and I was like, I don't want to go on a date with these people. Until Uche came, and I was like, he's the one. What is it? What's the next thing? The investors. Yeah, I actually really struggled with fundraising at first, because when you start an idea that you really believe in, because you've seen the problem, you've seen issues, and you know firsthand how to do it better, for me it was just obvious, like, this is it. This is the and so I would talk to investors who just didn't get it. They're like, yeah, you want to do lending in Nigeria? Like, I think other people are doing that. And I was like, no, they're not, but I couldn't explain it well. There's like an art to presenting your business in a way that other people, especially investors, get. And I swear to you, it took so many failed freaking pitches. I think it's the opposite of Jennie. Jennie, like, yeah, I think we had opposite experiences. Even microtraction gave me stress in the beginning. I mean, I'm glad they were cool with you, but they gave me stress. So like, yeah, no, like they were like, how is this different from everything else? I was like, I just told you that. No one was really listening. Anyway, they're great. Microtraction's really cool.
Who did you speak to? Who did you speak to?
Oh, please, please, let's not name names, but all of them.
Okay.
All of them.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, wow. No, it's see, like, but it wasn't their fault, it was mine. I just couldn't explain it well. But it was so clear. I think Kennedy was getting at this before with like people like following someone with conviction. right? So if you are crazy enough to do something and your conviction, no one can deter you, people like just kind of follow that. Everyone's looking around like, all right, I guess this is the guy who knows where to go. And they're all pointing at you and you're like, yeah. But you can't do that if you can't articulate where you're going, right? So that this was a very big lesson learned for me. By struggling through fundraising so much in those early days, got really good at explaining things. And then that's helped us like recruit and lead the team really well. So if anyone is struggling to talk to investors, definitely listen to the advice that was just said about not being too desperate for them. Do that. That was good. I was laughing when that advice was said because that is spot on.
Yeah, I think the quote was like, the more you chase the money, the less it wants you or something. Like, what was it? Kennedy had the great quotable. But yeah, the more you chase it, like the less investors want to give.
Oh, speaking of which, I have to go talk to an investor right now. Caleb, can I bail out real quick?
Yeah, this is the wrap up. So I guess like, yeah, if you need to bounce
Thanks,
right now,
everyone.
Zach,
Yeah, so I'm getting a WhatsApp call because I'm in trouble because I've stayed too long.
Okay. All
Thanks,
right.
everyone.
See you, Zach. We're going to round out here. Thanks everyone for joining. I hope that was valuable. I guess like just as we wrap up, I'd like to do two things. One is I'd love for people on the call to just share one thing that they learned or like one takeaway that like, you know, really had an impact or was really new to you from the session. If you could just type it in the chat, would be great.
Oh, you can also tweet your learnings at us at Entry Level Net.
Nice, let me link that. Awesome. So we got one, don't chase investors, that's good. Keen to see the other learnings. And yeah, as we wait for the others to come, yeah, Jennie, Kennedy, thanks so much for your time and for hopping on this call. Such a privilege to have such amazing founders with great advice and great energy on this call. So thank you guys.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks
Yeah,
for
this is great. Thank you.
Have a good one, everyone.
Yeah, Kennedy, I'm gonna like find you and link up with you
Sure.
somehow.
Yeah, I'll connect with you on LinkedIn, Jennie.
Okay, cool. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks,
Bye.
team. We'll catch you later. Thanks, guys. See you.
Okay. Wait, I want to run the poll for everybody's feedback. So I still see chats coming in. If you have to leave, that's okay, because I know we're over time. But if you can take a moment to vote in the poll how this event was for you, that would be really helpful. There will be an email sent out to you. I think it's already sent out with feedback. So if you have more specific feedback or if you have suggestions for future events we can do and more value we can bring for you, feel free to fill out that feedback form. But thank you so much for being here, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, team. We'll catch you at the next one. And super keen to do more of these.